Ready for battle.
Hello, my name is Coach Oyama and I have a passion to help you improve. I do all my, I specialize in macro and do all my VOD reviews for free. All you gotta do is DM me. So here's my Discord if you don't have it from Spilo server, which is from. Here's some like the experience that I have coaching Overwatch and playing Overwatch. Needless to say, let's get right into the VOD review. So so in this game I was trying to, I haven't read this. Bronze for Hanzo, okay, sure. In this game I was trying to take the angles with mid to long sights since I'm Hanzo, okay, and since it was Rialto, those were mostly the high ground parts and maps like windows above chokes, perfect. However, I found whenever I went up to that angle, I would quickly be Do and forced out by the enemy Genji, who both as a player and character I suck versus. Okay. By dueling, which I tended to lose or disengage due to movement speed, the Genji would always catch up. I'm curious what I could have done better in terms of positioning and dealing with the Genji. I was kind of forced to play Florzo. I know that's general game plan. So I think you have a really good idea of how to play Hanzo, so let me see your execution of it. And what we did to enable that game plan. Very nice. You notice the enemies are playing very out in the open, so yeah, I think I'm going to be going over very fundamental things here, talking about your mechanics. I don't know, because there's, looking at your gameplay, there's a lot that I could recommend, but you know, there's this piece of advice where it's like, the best piece of advice given at the wrong time is the worst piece of advice. Or, you know, when given advice, you have to consider two things: how good the advice is and when you get the advice. Because really good piece of advice at a bad time is bad. So, okay, one thing I want to, I guess, myth bust about Hanzo is, yes, of course, even at, you are very effective at long ranges. But you can be very effective at short ranges too. Okay, let's talk about, let me see, in this team fight, what do I want to recommend to you? One is running towards your supports, that's for sure. Two, going into this engage, so of course over time you'll get better at this, but let's talk about like transitioning from one thought to another. When you have one thought and then you need to transition to the other, the higher you go in rank, the speed at which you'll, first of all, the speed at which you'll generate these thoughts will be faster. So here I can see you have the thought, go high ground. Okay, boom, we're done with that thought. Then you see the Mercy, and the next thought is shoot the Mercy and get it, or we're on shoot the Genji. Let me just 0.25 this. Now we see the Mercy, and we're on shoot the Mercy. And then now we should be on Genji. And now we're thinking in this 1v1, are you favored or is the Genji favored? Let's just, from a general macro perspective, every 1v1 or every engagement ever has cooldowns, positioning, and health. So you and Genji are both full health, even. You and Genji, you have full cooldowns, but the positioning is very important. Don't you have full cooldowns here? No, he doesn't. So he doesn't have full cooldowns. So you could duel him, but if you know that your micro is not good enough to duel a Genji from the same even point, you need to adjust your positioning and change that, because you can't change your health and your cooldowns other than getting a health pack or standing in Curie ult, but that's not going to happen because you don't have a Curie, and also that's like very unrealistic. So you need to change your positioning to address the fact that there's a Genji on you. And so by taking this 1v1, instead of, well, I would say you have to apply pressure to him, because if you just start running away, he's going to kill you because you're an easy target. But there are two things that you can do. One is you can start looking to move towards your supports, because you have both your supports here, and it'll become a 3v1, hopefully, if you maintain line of sight. And then, so now you're lower on health, and if you don't have the mechanics to duel this Genji, which I would recommend, also just going in the training range, or even better, Kovacs for you aim training would actually be relevant. Because I noticed that your aim isn't up to what I'd like it to be. But at the beginning of this team fight, you know, you transition into the idea of you're assessing these cooldowns, positioning, and health. And of course, you're not like actively doing that in game, but it should just kind of be habit. Because it's like if there's a Tracer, a Reaper, or a Genji on you, it's kind of like, yeah, they're really good at short range. I'm not good at short range because I can't just like dome them with my mechanics. So I should move. I should move. And where should I move? The next thought should be move towards your supports and towards your team to help you with this engagement here. And so, even better if we can start thinking ahead. And, oh, Jesus. And as soon as you get this pick on Mercy, you realize, or you're thinking about it in your head, there's a Genji on me already. I need to start moving towards my supports. So, as soon as you get that pick on Mercy, you know, we moved like 3 centimeters backwards. But if you move that exact same forwards, you know, and then we just keep on calculating where you went, if your supports looked at you here, you would have been alive, and the difference between alive and dead is infinite. Divide by 0, you know what I mean? So your value here, you'd still be alive, and providing value for your team if you started moving towards your Mercy. And I think you'll get that, you'll build these habits over time, but more importantly, go back towards your healers. Yeah. Now this is tragic because I feel like you get scared of the Genji and now it kind of affects your gameplay in a very negative manner because you were taking aggressive angles that I liked in the past and enabling yourself to have these sidelines to shoot the enemy team. But okay, yeah, again, walking towards your supports, or the only reason to go backwards is a health pack because the Genji, of course, has more mobility than you, so he's always going to catch you if you try running backwards. Very nice kill. Well, I don't want to flood you with too much information. But, okay, let's go over ultimates, because I feel like ultimates are a very easy thing that you can improve on. Just on this first ultimate here, there are two, well, each here is very specific. Let's go over specifically Hanzo ult, since you're only going to be playing Hanzo. Every ultimate follows this same thing, where it's like, where in the team fight are we? If we look at team fights, we can split them into 3 sections. So it would be pre-fight, mid-fight, and then cleanup. So you never want to use your ult in cleanup, because cleanup is at the very end of the team fight where everything is dictated as a win or loss already. So, for example, if it's a 5v1, it's like, you don't need your ult. That's cleanup. We're just killing them so then we can move on to the next fight. So, at the other end of the extent, though, pre-fight is the very beginning when it's a 5v5. The reason why you don't want to use your ult here either, in either of these two places, you're not going to get value here. It's obvious, because it's like, why are we using our ult for one person? But here it's a little less obvious, but the reason why is because they'll have everything to deal with your ultimate, and they'll have the attention to deal with it because nothing's going on. Like if I asked you to dodge a fire strike or dodge a Hanzo ult or dodge a grab or anything, it's much easier if we're in the practice range and nothing's going on, right? And so if you're you have your full attention, you have all your resources to deal with it. And so that's exactly them right here. It's simply a game of dodging your ultimate. But if we launch your ult somewhere in the mid fight here, which is categorized where if you notice that their attention is starting to go somewhere else, if you notice that their cooldowns, they have less cooldowns, let's say a shield is breaking, or like really anything, if their positioning is a bit too far forward and they're going to have to use cooldowns, positioning, or health to get back into position, then you're already into the mid fight, and it's infinitely better, not infinitely, but much better than using your ult in the pre-fight or the cleanup. And in my opinion, using your ult in the pre-fight is almost as bad as using your ult in the cleanup. So it's nearly as bad as like using your ult when you're the last one alive, or when there's only one enemy left. Last one alive and only one enemy left is the exact same thing. I would say like never use your ult if you're the last one alive, unless you're like Necros and you're the best player in the world. Yeah, that's the only unless. I feel like talking about threats here, addressing the threat of like flankers in the backline. I would love to see you at least looking at them a bit more. So, for example, I have to be wise with my words. Disregard that. Because I feel like you are looking at them, just the way that you're dealing with them isn't necessarily the most efficient. Number one, again, would be connecting back with your supports and using your team. If you just simply adjust the team fight to be instead of a 1v1 because you're running backwards, leverage it to be a 5v1 because you're running towards your team. That's much more efficient than, you know, trying to 1v1, and your team is much closer. That's the other thing. Okay. Again, I think the okay. Let's go over Hanzo aiming here. If I were to recommend you one thing, it would be go watch good Hanzo players, and what you'll get from that is all these random habits, and not the explanations of why, like I'm giving you, but more so you'll see the habits in play, and you'll realize like, oh, I need to do this. And there are a lot of good players, especially GM players that I coach, that get to GM just because of their mechanics and because they picked up these habits and they have no idea why. And you know, we're not at that point where it's like you need to know the why, but knowing the why is much better because it'll build a much better foundation for you. But there are two different types of targets that you're shooting at. Ones that know they're there and ones that don't know that you're there. Or essentially standing still and not standing still. They don't know that you're there, or they're standing still, either one, and they're looking at you. You can take your time to line up the shot and get one headshot and shoot them in the head. Also on Hanzo, I would say it's nearly always better to fully charge your arrows and then shoot them, rather than shooting a like half flaccid arrow. Even in short range. It's just the way your kit is lined up. Okay, so again, running here into the backline, I would say this is the number one thing for you to reconnect with your team instead of trying to draw the Genji away from your team and isolate yourself into a 1v1. Watch the ultimate usage here. Because twice I noticed, oh, very nice shot. Very good shot onto that guy too. Not as impactful, but still a very nice shot. One thing that I notice in your gameplay is you're consistently missing the Mercy reses, and that's when she's standing still, and that's like one thing that I would love to see you go away from. I think there's a lot of tips here. Notice which heroes you need to be far away from and which heroes that you need to be, you know, gap close and be closer to and win. So for example, Junkrat, if you're far away from Junkrat, there's literally nothing that the Junkrat can do, and there's no disbenefit to you in comparison. And so when a Junkrat is close or flanking, make sure to stay away from him and shoot him from a distance, like mid to far range. Bastion, if you can stay behind a corner, and hopefully that means in longer range, because if you're in close range, he can just kind of round that corner and shoot you. Genji, it's screwed because he has more mobility than you, and you at a far range doesn't do as much as Genji because he can just gap close and get close to you because of the mobility, and he also has deflect to do so too. So if you're playing against Genji, I recommend just staying with your team. Very nice, you're just sitting up here spamming. Yeah, but if we notice, and over time your awareness will get better, because I notice that you're very focused on shooting the Sriracha here and you don't notice the Genji. But over time, as your aim improves, it's important to keep in mind that we have to address the threats in the enemy team composition. The threats are literally anything that can kill you or harm your output of value. So that would be like if Lifeweaver flanked, if Genji flanked, if Bastion flanked, even if Mercy flanked. If anyone gets close to you, you need to be aware of that and start positioning and reacting in a respectful manner. A manner that acknowledges their existence, you know what I mean? But I would say I am not expecting too much out of your awareness right now, but just be aware that over the course of time, as your mechanics eventually do improve, because they will, if you're just playing the game, you know, even if you feel like your heart's stuck, you're always improving your mechanics in some essence, unless you're building bad habits. But even then, you'll probably grow more in awareness over time in the game as you... Oh, you guys see 9? Not your fault. That's completely uncontrollable by you in that situation. But, you know, over time you'll get more awareness of these things, and while you're growing your awareness, it's important, you know, to put your mental capital in the right places. So, for example, here, if we're talking about threats, this Genji can contest you and you're nowhere near your team to be able to get healing. So that's a very big threat to you. Never mind, you have a Mercy pocket. But still, if the Genji contests you in that room and he kills your Mercy, it's a very bad threat for you to have. So I would say reposition into the high ground back where your life regains. Up here, in which you have a fallback plan, a contingency plan to walk backwards. So exactly, you're not properly addressing the threat because you don't have a contingency plan to regroup back with your team. It's the more important part than the fact that you're missing shots up here. It's allowable to miss shots, but no. You can either be the best player and hit all your shots, you can be the best player and have the best decision making and positioning to play with your team and enable the macro of your team and disable the, like play to your strengths and disable their weaknesses, or you can do both, and optimally both. But because I could just recommend we'll hit all your shots, but that comes with time and aim training. And I'd rather just see you have solid decision making and fundamentals. What happened here? Oh, you missed your movement. That'll come with time as well. I feel like you had a good idea there in playing aggressively and trying to contest card. You just missed your movement, so I'm not going to address that death. One thing I will recommend though, on Hanzo, especially on defense, actually on both sides, it's equally as important. You'll be able to recognize more opportunities in the mid-fight. When you're in your climb, you can still hold W to direct your movement air strafe at the end of your climb to go into those windows. And if you hold space as well, you'll mantle climb into the windows. But random small tip, that's not like a very kind of important, but not what I want to emphasize. What was I going to say? But yeah, the one important thing is as your game sense grows and you just understand the relationship between, like, okay, I can't dual Genjis at close range, I can't Bastion, I need to LOS when he goes into turret form and that kind of stuff, you'll eventually begin to realize moments of opportunity in which you are able to take a much more aggressive angles into the enemies. But here, again, regroup with your team when you're dueling the Genji and have a contingency plan. Because your contingency plan here is jumping into the enemy team to regroup with your team. So obviously it's a very, very risky plan. And, you have to address that risk. So versus, your Mercy's back here. So this Genji goes on to you instead of jumping towards here in the health pack. Jumping towards your Mercy is a much better option. And hopefully your Mercy will notice you. And I think it's a better option than isolating yourself into a 1v1. But, yeah, like I was saying earlier, you'll notice moments of opportunity in which you're able to go aggressive and use sonar to gain that information as well. But the best Hanzo players will not only play like very decisive and calculated from afar in the neutral, but also take flanks in which you're able to capitalize on the fact that Hanzo can one-shot. So when you use a sonar arrow, for example, say, for example, if you kill this Genji, okay, you don't kill the Genji, but I'll find another example in which you're able to flank. So right here, you can go the Bastion on the side and flank. Beautiful. So you get the information. Yeah, perfect. And, yep. And then here, this is a good opportunity. Instead of going through main, because you know that your team is winning this team fight because they don't have a tank, you can flank to the side and start shooting them when they don't know that you're there, and you'll get a higher chance of headshotting them if you properly know how to shoot when they don't know that you're there, which is position, wait for them to walk into your crosshair and keep your crosshair still in the right place because you don't have to flip, you're not under any pressure. But that wasn't the most optimal scenario that I can reference. What does that mean? Beam me up, Scotty. Look at that again. Just beam me up, Scotty. She just went straight up. Alright. But needless to say, so like here's a really good example of they're regrouping and you have this opportunity to go up here into the right side and properly address threats because they are closing around you, but your contingency plan, you're still able to walk backwards. If you get a pick on the side here, which your Orisa already got a pick, but that'll be one defining factor between a really good player and a decent player. So this off angle here on the high ground is very nice, beautiful. beautiful. This flank right here is exactly what I'm talking about, where you're not playing at a far range, which is okay, as long as you're addressing your threats. And so, perfect. So you see, you get that Ana kill. A bit, oh, nice shot onto Genji. Popping off. Damn. But it's a bit more nuanced than just that, because the timing, you know, as the enemy's awareness goes up, the timing on these flanks will become, the window of opportunity in these flanks will become slimmer and slimmer, because they'll notice that you're here. So, for example, they would notice that you're here if you were in GM, and that Genji would be on you with a pocketed Ana. So it's, you know, a balance of overstaying your welcome in the enemy backline versus getting value, because if you get a kill here, that's like as much value as you possibly can, because your team can push forward and help you after you get the kill. But now you're kind of overstaying your time here, because if they look backwards and start shooting you, that's really bad. Talk about dragon usage, at least on the timing. This is a really good dragon. Talk about the other part of using your Hanzo dragon. The way that you can use your dragon, first of all, maybe a bit advanced for you, but I would love it if you were to, whenever you have your dragon, think about what can I use my dragon with other ultimates. So May Freeze is kind of one, but more so your tank player, especially if you have a Zaryo. Grav Dragon is really good. Orisa Dragon is kind of underrated in my opinion, because you just got reworked and not a lot of people play Hanzo with their Orisa, but that is a thing. So when your Orisa ults, and you can save your ult with for the Orisa ult, and send it at your Orisa, because she does stun lock the enemies for like a half a second and slow them. That'd be a really good opportunity to combo with ults, and comboing with ults multiplies the value of your ult. So like 2 to 3 times actually, in generality, not like specifically speaking. But needless to say, if you can combo with the enemy ults, otherwise when you're using your Hanzo ult, you want to either cut the enemies in half. We draw let me overarch another generality in this team fight here. This team fight starts. Where does this team fight start? Where do you... Okay, right here. Yep. So if we were looking at the enemy team and your team as a generality, this is not like, don't take this as like a tool that you should use every time. You can draw a line between you and the enemy team. So if you're like VOD reviewing yourself, then this is where you can think about it. Otherwise, it should be more of a habit rather than fully thinking about this. And I'm going to assume that this line's going over here, just because the angles your healers are going to be playing back over here, and your tank player is going to utilize this angle. But needless to say, I'm going to draw it around right here. If you can launch your ultimate perpendicular to this line to split the enemy team, because currently if you use your ult like this, it's obvious that it's going to get no value. So if we flip that and more so split their team, because now half of their team will be out here in the open, and half of the team will be in too much cover to provide value to them and help them out. So half of the enemy team will be in cover. So you launching your ultimate, not necessarily that a higher degree is better, you know, like 90 degrees is perfect. Launch at 90 degrees every single time. No, not really. But launching your ult down here is a little less effective than launching your ult over here and splitting the enemy team, because in general they're going to be playing behind this line. And so if they all kite this way, it's not as effective as if you split them, and then your team is able to isolate a few targets. So when you use your ultimate here from the top-down perspective, even though it's not that bad of an ultimate, I would say, it's a pretty good ultimate, you kind of split the enemy team, which is pretty good, and you send it down mid to get a kill. Honestly, 7 out of 10 times you're going to, or like 2 out of 10 times you're going to be comboing with someone else's ultimate, ideally. 3 out of 10 times, so the other 3 out of 10 times, as well as the 2, you're going to be killing someone with your ultimate, like you were trying to do here. But half of the time, and probably a bit more than half of the time, you're going to be splitting the enemy team and using your ultimate as a positional advantage, rather than oh, beautiful. Oh, not beautiful. I thought you were about to kill that Genji because your Mercy was with you, and I was about to say this like proves my point of like just stay connected with your supports, and you'll have a much easier time with that Genji. But yeah, splitting the enemy team is invaluable, and I think it's just the fact that you don't know about it, but now you know about it, and so you can put that into your toolkit and use it more effectively. Because, you know, there won't be an opportunity to get a kill with your ultimate every single time where the enemy's like in a chokehold. You can just ult the chokehold and get a kill. Oh, nice. Yeah, see? And it seems obvious now that you're with your team and this Genji's taking a 1v5.
What you deserve.
But to me, it's obvious in the first point where when you were running backwards, it's like that exact same thing where it's just like, why didn't you go back to your team? Because you're already with your team here. Or you're not with your team, like right now, because you're cutting LOS to them. Ish. The Mercy's kind of here with you. But the rest of your team here. But when you walk back and LOS your team, then you have the support of your entire team dealing with this Genji. And so it's the same thing in first point. Okay, exactly the same thing. Instead of trying to get a kill with your ultimate here. And also this was in the pre-fight of the team fight. Because they have all their attention and abilities focusing on you, kind of. It was kind of into the mid-fight, but I would love to see it a little more into the mid-fight. Splitting the enemy team with your ultimate is much better in this scenario rather than getting a kill. Because obviously, if you don't get a kill, it's just, oh, boo-hoo, my ultimate's gone. But if you split the enemy team, you enable your team to also get value off of your ultimate. Because, you know, they're able to shoot 2 more targets, or like 1 more target, even better, more freely than before. So I'm assuming that... Why are you still dead? Oh, that's the end. I'm just skipping to the same part because it's looping. Looping back. But yeah, so let's go over a couple of things. So dealing with the Genji, first of all, your number 1 concern, and yeah, this is a very good concern and easy solution. Go with your team. LOS your team. I can explain off angles and hard flanks, but that's not necessarily the best thing to explain here. It's more so like when you thinking ahead after you kill a Mercy and the Genji's with the Mercy and he's looking at you, think, shit, I need to get back with my team, or play near a health pack, and most of the time it's going to be your team. 2, using your ultimate to split the enemies. Remember then pre-fight, mid-fight, and cleanup. And although you don't have to memorize this jargon or whatever, just think, like, do they have all their stuff to deal with my ultimate? No? Perfect. Are they ready to deal with my ultimate because they're not paying attention to anything else? Okay, maybe I shouldn't ult because it's really obvious. And then 3, I'm going to say practice aiming in like Kovacs, practice your movement. Yeah, just the more you play, the more you're able to get your aiming under control and have full control of your mechanics, the better you'll be able to think, because it'll clear up your brain. Let's say you have 100% brain power and using 99% of it on just aiming and moving and not dying to the enemy Genji. If you're able to flip that and 1% of that and you provide the same value, but 99% of it is thinking about what you need to do, your decision making will grow drastically. And, you know, optimally, it's like 0% aiming and it's just like the breathing. And then you're just all thinking about decision making and you have the best aim in the world. And eventually you'll get there, but let's just focus on your aim and getting it under control. So the more controlled your aim is, because right now your aim's not that bad, honestly. It's not the best, but the more controlled and the more under control that you have it, even if it's bad, if it's consistently under control, I would say that's good, and that only comes with time. So practice aiming. Practice aiming deliberately. You know, don't go into like, well, quick play, you will practice your aim, but it's not 100% of the time. It's maybe only like 30% of the time. The other times you're like resetting, going to high grounds, you know, thinking all this other stuff of playing Overwatch. If you're just in an aim trainer and just like sitting there aim training, of course it's boring as shit, but it might need to be what you want to do. So hopefully I helped you today. Good luck in your next rank games. Yeah.